Hi, I'm Ed Khouri, and welcome to our recovery series starting with Low Joy Airlines. I want to help you understand today how addiction works and why it's so easy to get addicted to so many things. You see, there's a connection between addiction, dopamine, and joy. See, joy is what happens in my brain when it's experiencing God or other people being really glad to be with it. When that happens, dopamine shoots off in my brain like fireworks. It makes everything feel great. The problem in addictions is things that I call beeps. Beeps are behaviors, events, experiences, people, or substances that also trigger the release of dopamine and endorphins in my brain. Beeps form an artificial sense of joy. So they run the same neurochemical pathways as joy does, but they're artificial. They are not connected to genuine relationships with God and others. Now, the best way I know to explain all this is to tell you a story about Low Joy Airlines. Are you ready? Have you ever flown on Low Joy Airlines for a day, a week, a month, or your entire life? Do you know what the founder's motto at Low Joy Airlines is? It's this: some airlines believe in service and travel that reaches for the stars. But at Low Joy Airlines, our service model is different. We like to find every black hole we can, suck the life out of you, and start flying into them as hard and fast as we possibly can. At Low Joy Airlines, we take that joy out of life better than anyone, and we have flights to nowhere leaving hourly. So how does your flight on Low Joy Airlines start? Well, the fun begins as soon as you get to the airport, because even though it's your airline, LJA is having a lot of problems getting off the ground today. You see, everybody else's flight has been canceled. Yours hasn't because you own the airlines. But that just means there are now hundreds of people waiting to join you to rebook as you check in at the helpful LJA ticket counter. And by the time you've gotten through that stampede, you are off to be stripped of your dignity at the official LJA security screening. Yes, LJA has its own screening where there is absolutely no joking. And you are stripped of everything that ever did make your life enjoyable, amusing, or fun, or funny. Now, can you spot the experienced LJA passenger in that photo? Now, one of the problems LJA has is quality control issues, and you don't always get to pick your plane. Sometimes it's upsized, sometimes it's downsized, and sometimes it's propeller-sized. And you end up sitting on the runway for a while. But eventually they solve the problem, and it's time to board your plane. Now, as you board your LJA flight, you first discover that boarding by zone is a myth. Because boarding by zone 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. never happens. LJA boarding is like a stampede of wildebeests all heading for the watering hole while being chased by a lion. And because you spent so long in security, you're at the end of the line, so guess where your carry-on bags go? That's exactly right. There's no bin space left, so they will go under your seat. And of course, when you board the plane, you discover that you're seated in economy in the very last row of the plane. So what is it like being there? Well, first, you are stuck in the middle between two very large people. You're in the middle seat, and there's so little room. Your arms are drawn into your sides. You got to hold your breath a little bit and not breathe too deeply. And you're at the bulkhead seat. That's the very last row, and that means your seat won't recline at all for the entire long flight. And because your carry-on is stuffed under the seat in front of you, your knees are now tucked up under your chin because there's no room for your feet. And best of all, you are seated right next to the restroom. That's right, the restroom seat on a very long, very full flight. Now, you also discover that the passenger in front of you is not all that interested in reclining the seat when they're allowed to. So just as you're leaning forward to check out your movie selections for the flight, bam, you are hit in the face by the back of the guy's or woman's chair. And unfortunately, now your knees are under your chin and your nose is bleeding, but you're thinking, okay, at least the movie will come. But unfortunately, the movie is broken. and so are your headphones. So there will be no in-flight entertainment for you. So you reach for the call button to ask the flight attendant for help, and you meet your very helpful LJA flight attendant, whose famous saying is, "You want what?" And soon, it's time for your LJA meal. Now, we don't know what it is, and neither does the airline, but they don't really care because it's Low Joy Airlines. And for dessert, you have your tasty yogurt treat, which was good probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, but you get to try it now. And with your dessert, you get your coffee prepared by your LJA flight attendant, who's still mad at you and everyone else. But soon, it's time to meet your daring LJA pilot. Yes, your LJA pilot is an intrepid and daring flyer who loves his job. And your pilot believes in finding out where the turbulence is so that he or she can head directly through it. LJA pilots love turbulence. Basically, life is miserable and joyless on LJA, but it is, after all, our airline. It's our life. It's where we live. It's where we fly day after day after day, and we have our special middle seat by the bulkhead, and we can't get off. And then one day, something unusual happens on Low Joy Airlines. A beeps, a behavior, event, experience, people, or substance that triggers the release of dopamine in your brain gets on that plane and sits down right next to you. Now, there are a million different flavors of beeps, everything from sex to partying or codependency to cocaine to performance to alcohol to work to computers and video games or internet pornography, or that woman standing there in the spotlight with the microphone. She might be into approval and performance, or she might be into a ministry addiction. There's thrill-seeking behaviors. There's money, which is about power. There's entertainment. There's control. There's gambling, and there's all kinds of flavors of ice cream and other high-sugar, high-fat foods, which just taste great. Now, perhaps the beeps that got on the plane with you today was alcohol. Now, what happens when alcohol gets on the plane? Well, for the first time, there's a release of dopamine happening in your brain. And what that means for you is you feel pleasure. For the first time, there in your middle seat by the bulkhead with your nose bleeding and no room and the food's horrible and everything's miserable, you feel better. Now, the problem with a single beeps is they don't travel alone. They always travel with their friends or in herds. So what other beeps get on the plane with you? Well, how about sex? Sex is a great beeps. It makes you feel good. It triggers a release of dopamine, so that sneaks on board too. And life is looking and feeling even better. And along with sex comes some really delicious chocolate and other foods that you just love. And this is your new and improved LJA, because for the first time, you're actually enjoying your flight. That dopamine released by beeps is fooling your brain. It's a pseudo joy that is taking the place of actual joyful relationships with God and others that help your brain work better. LJA is still flying nowhere, but you're having a whole heck of a lot more fun getting there. For the first time, LJA doesn't feel so bad. It just seems to get better and better, and beeps have made all the difference. Now, here's the problem with beeps is they're not content to sit with you and coach. I mean, they'll hang out with you and you feel better. But pretty soon, alcohol, your beeps buddy, no longer wants to ride in coach. It wants to move up to business class service. So you think about it. How much time, effort, energy, resources, money is it going to cost me to keep my beeps happy? I mean, I don't want them to get off the plane because I'm feeling better about everything with them on, and I remember how bad it was before they got there. So I really don't want to go back to the old LJA before they got on the plane. So I make a decision. The extra resources to keep beeps happy are going to cost me. So, to make room for them, I stop family, friends, my job, people that are important to me for boarding, and I start giving their seats, selling their seats to others. Because after all, who wants to go back to the old LJA? It was no fun anyway. So while my alcohol buddy Beeps settles in happily in business class, I still have chocolate and sex, and they're increasingly important to me back in economy. They're still accessible to me, and I'm feeling good. But things don't last for long because sex and chocolate are consuming more of my health, my resources, my time, my effort, my energy. Sexually transmitted diseases, more time, more effort, more money, more resources gone to sex. My health is bad because I'm eating all the wrong things, I'm staying up too late, and it's not long before those things want to move to business class too. And sooner or later, Beeps set their sights on first class service, style, and comfort. And I have another decision to make because by now, my resources are almost gone. But I remember how bad it was on LJA Airlines before the Beeps got on board. And even though they don't sit with me anymore, I remember what it was like when they first got on the plane and that first jolt of pseudo-artificial joy hit my brain. And LJA felt better. And I can't imagine flying without those on the plane anymore. I just remember how much better everything was when they get on board. Life and my flight doesn't seem possible without them. So I do what I have to do, and Beeps move into first class. And Beeps in first class live large, they drain our resources, and we feel the pain without them is close, but we just can't imagine LJA without them, so we let them stay. And then one day something amazing happens. Beeps lose interest in first class. You see, they now want the entire plane. So do you know what they do? They shock you. And they kick down the cockpit door, they throw your pilot out and start flying the plane. Because Beeps never are content. As long as you let them on the plane, they're never content until they're flying it. Now, you have a Beeps driving your plane. And when Beeps are in charge, they take us to where they want us to go, to the people, the places, things, the areas we never imagined going because Beeps are flying our plane. They take us where they want to go, and our life becomes completely, totally unmanageable. Now, if you understand how Beeps create a form of pseudo-joy for us, it's not too hard to understand why it's so easy to get strongly attached to things that kill us. I mean, LJA is silly, but there's nothing funny about addictions. And that is exactly how it works because it hijacks the areas of our brain at the deepest subconscious levels and twists them into responding to the dopamine generated by Beeps instead of genuine joyful relationships with God and other. Now, here's the good news. We can learn to grow joy in recovery and displace Beeps. Genuine joyful relationships with God and other displacing Beeps and growing those kind of relationships are what the Thriving Recover Your Life program is all about. Now, if you want to know how your life and your recovery can become empowered by joy and displace artificial joy and Beeps, you're going to want to visit us on our website at www.thrivingrecovery.org and check out Restarting, which is the recovery module in the Thriving Recover Your Life program. I hope to see you on another video soon, and stay off Low Joy Airlines.